The glass-paneled doors of family court swung inward with a hollow thud that rolled down the polished corridor. Morning light poured through the high windows, turning the marble floors into a bright runway leading straight to courtroom 4B. At the far end, Adrian Cole treated it like exactly that. He strolled down the hall in a navy suit cut within an inch of perfection, silk tie lying flat, cufflinks winking with every easy swing of his arms. To anyone watching, he didn't look like a man headed into a divorce hearing. He looked like a CEO arriving at another victory press conference. Hooked to his arm was Sienna Hart, all curves and confidence in a red dress that photographed well from every angle. Her heels clicked a sharp rhythm on the stone, her hair fell in glossy waves, the gold bracelet at her wrist flashed each time she adjusted her grip on Adrian's forearm, as if to make certain no one in the hallway could possibly mistake her place at his side. Conversation in the corridor thinned out as they passed. A court officer paused mid-sip of coffee. A woman waiting on a custody case looked away from her phone to stare. Two reporters from a financial network tracked Adrian's progress with open curiosity, whispering about the billionaire tech founder finally ditching the wife. Adrian lapped it up. He let his smile spread, white teeth, movie star charm, the same expression that had charmed investors and journalists for a decade. This, he told himself, was the last ugly formality before his life got cleaner, lighter, better. By evening he'd be free of Maya, free of the twins, free of the constant draining demands of family life. Free, and still rich enough to never feel it. "This is going to be quick," he murmured, bending his head toward Sienna as they neared the double doors of courtroom 4B. His voice carried the casual authority of a man who had never heard the word no without a workaround attached. "We question the kids, push for tests, she melts down, the judge sees she's unstable. She walks out with almost nothing." Sienna's lips curled into a satisfied little smile. "Good," she said, low enough that only he could hear. "The sooner this is done, the sooner we stop sneaking around like some office affair and start living like we're supposed to." She pressed herself closer, scarlet fabric brushing the perfect crease of his suit pants, making absolutely sure the onlookers got the picture: the billionaire, the new woman, the old wife about to be replaced. Adrian's laugh bounced off the paneled walls. He pictured Maya as he had last seen her attired, quiet, small in his memory, and felt a flicker of irritation that she'd dragged things all the way to court instead of just signing what his lawyers had sent. He'd been generous, he thought. More generous than she deserved after years of wasting his money on organic snacks and preschool art classes. He reached for the brass handle of courtroom 4B, confident enough that he didn't bother to glance through the little rectangular window in the door. If he had, he would have seen Maya Cole already there. She sat at the front table, back straight, a plum-colored dress skimming her knees, a simple strand of pearls resting at her throat. Her hands were folded over a neat stack of files and a yellow legal pad, pen lined up perfectly along the margin. To most people, she might have looked like someone's assistant holding a spot for the real attorney. Only the woman standing beside her, Cassandra Blake, knew better. Maya's gaze didn't flicker when the doors behind her opened. She didn't turn to watch Adrian's entrance, didn't flinch at the burst of laughter that swept into the courtroom ahead of him. Instead, she kept her eyes on the bench where Judge Donovan Reed was sorting through a thick manila envelope he'd received earlier that morning, a file filled with documents she'd spent months assembling in absolute silence. DNA reports. Financial forensics. Sworn statements. A carefully labeled audio transcription that could turn a billionaire's voice into his own worst witness. From the gallery, the scene played like a spectacle, the powerful husband arriving with his gleaming new partner, the quiet wife sitting alone at counsel table, the press huddled in the back row waiting for a scandal worth broadcasting. From Maya's seat, it felt more like the final move in a very long game. Adrian sauntered to his side of the room, sienna with a red streak at his elbow. His attorneys clustered around him, all polished watches and muted ties, murmuring last-minute advice he barely listened to. He was too busy enjoying the view, Maya without makeup, cameras loved, no diamond rings, no designer gown. Just that modest dress and those pearls, he'd bought them years ago, he remembered vaguely, like she was trying to look respectable. He smirked, certain the judge would see exactly what Adrian wanted him to see, a successful man strangled by a bitter, dependent wife. Across the aisle, Maya finally lifted her eyes to him. There was no anger in her face, no pleading, no desperation. Just a calm, steady assessment, as if she were back in a boardroom, evaluating a hostile witness she intended to take apart one question at a time. For the first time that morning, something in Adrian's chest tightened. Judge Reed cleared his throat, and the murmur in the gallery died. Cole versus Cole, he announced, voice echoing through the high-ceilinged room. Appearances for the record. As the attorneys stated their names, Maya's fingers brushed the edge of the topmost folder in front of her. The tab was neatly labeled in her own handwriting. Paternity, DNA results. Adrian laughed on his way into court, certain he was the hunter. He had no idea that the moment that envelope opened, the story of how he and Maya ever got to this courtroom, every choice, every compromise, every betrayal, would be dragged into the light. And it all started long before he was a billionaire, back when Maya Cole believed the man sitting across from her coffee cup was incapable of the kind of lie that could fit inside a single strand of DNA. Before the judge hears what Adrian has become, you have to understand who he used to be. Tap subscribe so you never miss the next story. And it all started long before he was a billionaire, back when Maya Cole believed the man sitting across from her coffee cup was incapable of the kind of lie that could fit inside a single strand of DNA. The first time Maya saw Adrian, he was losing an argument with a vending machine. It was past 11 on a rain-soaked Thursday, and the law library's fluorescent lights had taken on that slightly cruel hue they got after midnight. Maya was hunched over a stack of casebooks, highlighting rules of evidence until the words blurred, when a muffled curse cut through the usual hush. She looked up just as a lanky guy in a faded Colware Beta hoodie smacked the vending machine with the side of his fist. "Come on," he muttered. "I gave you my last dollar. This is a relationship, not a hostage situation." A bag of chips dropped with a reluctant clunk. He grinned like he'd just negotiated peace between two countries. Maya couldn't help it, she laughed. The sound bounced off the high shelves, attracting his attention. He turned, chips in hand, searching for the source of the laughter. When his eyes found her, the grin shifted, focused. "You saw none of that," he said, walking over. "As far as I'm concerned, the machine and I had an amicable resolution." "You bribed it," Maya said. "That's not a negotiation. That's corruption." Spoken like a true attorney, he replied. "Adrian." He extended the bag instead of his hand. "Salt and vinegar?" "Evidence," she said, taking one chip. "Maya. And I'm not an attorney yet. Just a very tired law student about to be buried under torts." "Computer science," he said, nodding toward his hoodie. "I build things that make people's lives easier." "And fight vending machines," she added. "Hey, injustice is injustice." He slid into the chair across from her without asking. "What about you? Planning to use all that legal knowledge for good or evil?" "Good," she said automatically. "Mostly. I like systems. Rules. The idea that if people follow them, things stay fair." Adrian leaned back, studying her. "You really believe that? Don't you?" He thought for a second, then shrugged. I believe people like to think they're following rules while they're secretly looking for the cheat codes. You sound like my ethics professor's worst nightmare, she said, but she was still smiling. They ended up talking for hours, long after her highlighters dried out and his laptop battery died. About technology and privacy, what law should look like in a world where data never really disappeared, how they wanted to build lives that mattered more than the jobs attached to their names. We'll open a joint firm, Adrian said as they left the library, sharing his umbrella under the drizzle. Cole and Cole. You take the terrifying clients, I'll design their software. Bold of you to assume I'd put your name on the door, she said. I'm very charismatic, he replied. You'll come around. Maya didn't say yes that night. She didn't have to. The way she laughed at his bad jokes and the way his eyes softened when he watched her talk about the law said enough. They fell in love between exams and code sprints. There were late nights at cheap diners, Adrian sketching out app interfaces on napkins while Maya annotated contracts beside him. Afternoons in crowded coffee shops where she quizzed him on basic legal terms so you don't accidentally sign your soul away in your first venture deal. You say that like I have anything worth selling, he'd say, glancing at his ancient laptop. You have ideas, she'd answer. That's where everything starts. She passed the bar the same week his fledgling app, an internal communication platform for small teams, got its first serious investor call. They celebrated on the roof of their tiny apartment building with a bottle of grocery store champagne and a view of the city skyline that looked much more glamorous from that distance. I'm telling you, Adrian said, arm wrapped around her shoulders, a few years from now, we're going to look back at this and laugh that we were ever worried about rent. As long as we don't forget what this feels like, Maya replied. Not having much, but knowing exactly who we are. Deal, he said, clinking his plastic cup against her bottle. If I ever turn into one of those guys in the magazines that you hate, you have permission to stage an intervention. Don't test me, she warned, but her eyes were warm. They got married in a backyard strung with white lights, surrounded by friends who'd watched them grind through school and get back up after every rejection. Adrian's parents cried during the vows. Maya's sister smuggled extra cupcakes into her purse. The whole thing cost less than Adrian would later spend on a single watch, but at the time it felt like the most extravagant day in the world. The twins came 2 years later, a surprise that arrived in the form of 2 heartbeats on a grainy ultrasound screen. 2? Adrian whispered, his eyes wide. We're getting 2? Buy one, get one free, Maya said, but tears were already streaming down her cheeks. Those early years were messy and loud and exhausting and perfect. Adrian worked insane hours, building his platform from a scrappy startup into a company people actually recognized. But he still came home for bath time whenever he could, rolling his sleeves up to splash suds on the babies' round bellies, murmuring promises into tiny ears. I'm doing this for you, he'd tell them. So you'll never have to worry about anything. Sometimes he believed it. Maya hung onto the legal world for as long as she could, late nights drafting contracts after the twins finally fell asleep, remote work from the kitchen table while they napped. But the balancing act stretched her thinner and thinner. Adrian's travel intensified. The childcare they could afford wasn't enough coverage for both their schedules. What if I step back for a while, she said one night, after they finally wrestled the twins into matching pajamas. Just until the company is more stable. You're growing so fast. Someone needs to be the constant for them. You'd really do that? Adrian asked, the question loaded. She heard what he wasn't saying. You'd really give up your career? For us? For me? It's not giving up, she said, though sometimes it stung like it was. It's a pause. I can always go back. His expression softened. You're amazing. I don't deserve you. Maya believed him. She left her firm with a polite email and a lump in her throat, packing away her bar exam notes and court heels. In their place came baby schedules and school forms, pediatrician visits and PTA meetings. Her days became a blur of car seats and laundry, homework and meal prep. The sharp, bright part of her brain that had once loved case law and negotiation found new outlets in budgeting, scheduling, crisis management. She told herself it was temporary. That marriages were partnerships, and this was just her turn to carry the family in a different way. Meanwhile, Adrian's company exploded. He did panel discussions on the future of workplace communication and interviews in glossy magazines about how to build a billion-dollar platform before 35. He traded in the faded hoodie for tailored suits, the beat-up sedan for a sleek electric car. Their cramped apartment gave way to a glass-walled house with a view of the skyline from the other side. Sometimes Maya watched him on TV while simultaneously cleaning up spilled juice and helping one twin glue macaroni to construction paper. "That's Daddy," she'd tell them, pointing to the screen. "Daddy," they'd chirp, then go back to smearing glue on the table. She wanted to be proud. Mostly, she was. But there were cracks, even then. It started with the phone. Adrian's first big investor had insisted on getting him a better one. "You can't run a company off something held together with duct tape," the man had joked, handing over the sleek new device with its glass back and uninterrupted screen. After that, the phone might as well have been surgically attached to Adrian's hand. It buzzed during dinner, hummed during bedtime stories, lit up with confidential notifications in the middle of the night. Maya tried not to resent the rectangle of metal and light that seemed to be siphoning his attention away, one vibration at a time. Business trips multiplied. At first they were small, a night here, 2 nights there. Then they stretched longer, a week in San Francisco for a pitch, 3 days at a conference in Berlin, a strategic retreat in the Bahamas. When he was home, he was present in fragments, a rushed breakfast before a board call, a distracted kiss on her cheek as he passed behind the sofa, a bedtime story half finished because an alert popped up that just couldn't wait. "I miss you," she told him one night, as they lay in bed, backs almost touching but not quite. "I'm right here," he said, scrolling through email. "That's not what I mean." He sighed, set the phone down with exaggerated patience. "We're in a scaling phase, May. It won't always be like this. You know that." "I know," she said, because logically it made sense. Startups demanded everything. It was right there in all the articles. What she didn't say was that she remembered when everything had included her. The first time she heard the name Sienna Hart, it was in a group text Adrian forwarded from his leadership team. "Let's loop Sienna in on this," someone had written. "She's got the operations side on lock." "New hire?" Maya had asked casually over dinner. "Yeah," Adrian said, chewing. "She's great. Came recommended from 3 different people. Super organized. Total lifesaver. You'd like her." "Glad you're getting help," Maya said, and meant it. If someone could pry some of that work off his plate, maybe she'd get her husband back. The first time she saw Sienna was at a company gala a year later. Maya had spent half the day wrangling the twins into staying with her sister and then trying to make sense of the dress code. Tech black tie apparently meant everything from hoodies with tuxedo jackets to full gowns. She settled on a simple black dress and the pearl necklace Adrian had given her for their 5th anniversary, classic, understated, safe. The venue was a downtown hotel ballroom full of exposed brick and industrial chandeliers. Adrian took her hand as they walked in, smiling for the cameras, one arm around her waist. Flashbulbs went off, people called his name. For a moment, with his palm warm on her back, she felt like she belonged there. Then she heard a laugh, bright, practiced, just a little too loud. Sienna Hart stood near the bar, holding court. She was younger than Maya had expected, mid-20s at most, in a metal sheen dress that clung like liquid. Dark hair fell over one shoulder in glossy waves. Her lipstick was precisely the shade that matched the company logo projected on the wall. As Adrian steered Maya over to introduce her, Sienna's hand grazed his arm just a second longer than necessary. "Maya, this is Sienna," Adrian said. "She keeps the entire place from imploding." "Someone has to," Sienna said, smiling. "Nice to meet you. Adrian talks about you and the twins all the time." Her tone was warm, but her eyes flicked over Maya's dress, her hair, the pearls at her throat, as if measuring something and filing the results away. "Thank you for taking such good care of him," Maya said. "Trust me," Sienna replied, her gaze sliding back to Adrian, "he's a handful." The comment was innocuous enough. The look that accompanied it was not. On the ride home, Maya stared out the car window at the blur of city lights. "She seems close to you," she said mildly. Adrian laughed. "To everyone. It's part of her job. She's good at reading people." "I guess," Maya said. The unease sat in her stomach like a cold stone. She pushed it down. This was what happened when you'd been out of the professional world for a while, she told herself. You forgot how colleagues interacted. Besides, she trusted Adrian. Didn't she? The day everything cracked open, it was raining again. The twins had come down with a stomach bug, and Maya had spent the afternoon cycling between laundry, disinfectant wipes, and ginger ale. By the time Adrian got home, she was exhausted in that deep, bone-level way that made her want to lie on the floor and not move for a week. "Rough day?" he asked, shrugging off his coat, already scrolling through his phone. "Twin vomit roulette," she said. "Your favorite game. Could you maybe put that down and help me with?" He held up a finger, eyes still on the screen. "Give me 2 minutes. This investor in Singapore keeps forgetting we're not in the same time zone." Maya swallowed the rest of her sentence. "Of course. Work first." She went back upstairs to change the sheets on their son's bed. When she came down again, the house was quiet. Adrian's coat was draped over the back of a chair, his phone lay face up on the counter, charging. The shower upstairs started running. She only meant to check the time. Her fingertip brushed the screen. It woke, and a notification popped up at the top. "Sienna, miss your arms already. Can't wait for our weekend. Don't let your wife ruin it this time." Maya's heart stopped. For a second, she thought she'd misread it. That stress and fatigue had scrambled the words into something they weren't. She blinked, but the message didn't change. Her hands went cold. Then hot. Then oddly numb. "Don't let your wife ruin it this time." This time. There had been a last time. A time before that. Enough times to warrant a pattern. She stared at the screen while the shower roared upstairs. Her reflection in the black border looked like someone else's eyes too wide, mouth a thin line. A second message arrived. "Booked our usual suite." Winky face. "Hurry up and tell your lawyer to send the papers already." The buzzing of the phone seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet kitchen. Maya set it down very carefully, as if it were something that might explode. She had cross-examined witnesses during a mock trial who'd done terrible things and tried to lie about them. She'd trained herself to keep her voice calm, to let the facts sit in the air like weights. But this wasn't a deposition. This was her life. She went upstairs. Adrian's silhouette was visible through the frosted glass of the shower door, head tilted back under the spray, relaxed, completely unaware that the tectonic plates of his marriage had shifted in the last 60 seconds. She opened the bathroom door and leaned against the sink, arms wrapped around herself. "Hey," he called over the water. "That you?" "Who else would it be?" she said, amazed at how steady she sounded. "We need to talk." "Can it wait?" he called. "I've got another call in 20. It's about Sienna." Silence. The water kept running, but the air in the bathroom changed. The shower door slid open a crack, steam curling around his face. "What about her?" Maya held up his phone. The screen was still lit with the last message. For a second, there was genuine surprise in his eyes. Then his features rearranged themselves into something familiar: annoyance, condescension, the well-practiced expression of a man who'd talked his way out of 1,000 problems. "You went through my phone," he demanded, stepping out, water dripping onto the tiles. "Seriously, Maya?" "I picked it up to check the time," she said. It lit up. "What was I supposed to do, pretend I didn't see it?" "You were supposed to trust me," he snapped, grabbing a towel. "Not jump to insane conclusions over some joke." "A joke?" Her voice rose. "She booked your usual suite." "It's not like that," he said. "We travel for work. Sometimes we end up in the same hotels." "She's being flirtatious, that's all." "It doesn't mean anything." "The words 'don't let your wife ruin it this time' don't mean anything?" Maya asked. "How many times does something have to happen before it counts?" He ran the towel over his hair, avoiding her eyes. "You're tired. You've been cooped up with the kids all day. You're reading into things that aren't there." Gaslighting, she thought automatically, the term slotting into place like a puzzle piece from an old textbook. "What am I reading into?" she pressed. "Spell it out for me." "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're having an affair with your assistant and planning weekends in hotel suites while I'm home covered in vomit." "That's not fair," he said. "You knew when you decided to stay home that my work would be demanding." "This has nothing to do with your work," she said quietly. "This is about your choices." Adrian's jaw flexed. He wrapped the towel around his waist, finally meeting her eyes. "I am under a level of pressure you can't even imagine," he said. "I have investors, a board, 1,000 people relying on me. I'm allowed to have friends. I'm allowed to blow off steam. I am not going to be interrogated in my own house because you're feeling insecure." The words hit harder than she expected. Insecure. Cooped up. Tired. As if her entire emotional reality boiled down to hormones and cabin fever. Maya inhaled slowly, drawing on years of training she thought she'd left behind. "Are you having an affair with Sienna?" she asked, each word crisp. "Yes or no?" His gaze flicked to the phone in her hand, then back. "I'm not doing this," he said. "Not when you've invaded my privacy and twisted a harmless text into some big drama." Which was not an answer at all. He brushed past her, leaving a trail of steam and damp footprints, leaving her standing in a bathroom that suddenly felt unfamiliar, as if she'd walked into someone else's life by mistake. Downstairs, she heard his voice rise anger, not apology, as he snatched his phone off the counter. She heard the door slam a minute later. Maya leaned on the sink until her arms stopped shaking. Then she went to check on the twins, who were sleeping curled into each other like they'd shared a womb for a reason. She smoothed their hair back, her chest aching so sharply it was hard to breathe. Something inside her broke that night. Something else woke up. For 3 days, they moved around each other like ghosts. Adrian stayed late at the office, claiming endless calls and crises. When he did come home, he was curt and defensive, accusing her of snooping and trying to control him. Maya stopped asking questions. She listened. She watched. She took mental notes. On the 4th day, she called Cassandra Blake. They hadn't spoken properly in years, not since Cassandra had moved from corporate law into family litigation and become something of a legend for dismantling powerful husbands who thought their money made them untouchable. Maya Cole, Cassandra said when she picked up, voice warm with surprise. To what do I owe the pleasure? Please tell me you're starting your own practice and want to steal all my clients. I think my husband is having an affair, Maya said. The words tasted metallic. And I think he's planning something worse than that. There was a beat of silence on the line. Then Cassandra's tone shifted, the warmth sharpening into focus. Tell me everything, she said. Maya did. She talked about the message, the hotel references, the way Adrian had turned the confrontation back on her. She described the gradual distance, the financial shifts she'd noticed, money moved between accounts, new entities with vague names on bank statements he'd brushed off as tax stuff. This is a textbook, Cassandra said when Maya finished, her voice grim. Men in his position rarely just cheat. They restructure. They hide assets. They rewrite the narrative before they file, so by the time you even realize what's happening, you look like the unstable one. He keeps telling me I'm overreacting, Maya admitted. That I'm imagining things. That's because he wants you to doubt your instincts, Cassandra replied. Listen to me, Maya. You are not crazy. You are early. That's the best place to be. Early for what? Maya whispered. For war, Cassandra said simply. The good news is, you have something most of my clients don't. What's that? A law degree and a brain that knows exactly how men like your husband operate, Cassandra said. If you want to fight, I'll help you. But from this moment on, you don't confront without evidence. You don't tip your hand. You gather. Quietly. Methodically. Can you do that? Maya looked around her kitchen, the twins' artwork taped to the fridge, the pile of unpaid bills, the photo of her and Adrian on their wedding day smiling like they'd invented love. Yes, she said. I can do that. Good, Cassandra said. First, we get a private investigator on Sienna. Second, we bring in a forensic accountant to follow the money. Third. She paused. Third? Maya prompted. Third, we talk about DNA, Cassandra said. Because if Adrian is as strategic as he sounds, I'd bet my retainer he's going to claim the kids aren't his. Maya's stomach dropped. He would never. You'd be surprised what people will do when they're staring down support payments on billionaire-level income, Cassandra cut in gently. We preempt him. We do the testing quietly, on your terms, so when he tries that move, you're already holding the proof. Maya closed her eyes. The idea of swabbing her children's cheeks, of turning their very biology into evidence, made her want to scream. But she heard the truth in Cassandra's voice. You said this is war, she murmured. It is, Cassandra said. But you're not going into it alone. After they hung up, Maya stood very still in the kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant cartoon theme song drifting from the living room where the twins watched TV. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff that had been slowly eroded under her feet for years. The difference now was that she could see the drop. She picked up a pen and a legal pad. Old habits slid back into place with a terrifying kind of ease. At the top of the page, in careful block letters, she wrote, Cole v. Cole, preparation. Below that, she started a list. Hire PI, track Adrian and Sienna. Forensic accountant, review all accounts, transfers. Secure copies of statements, emails, shared files. Research discrete DNA testing clinic. By the time the twins came in asking for dinner, the page was half full. Maya taped it inside the pantry door, beneath the cereal boxes, where no one but her ever looked. When Adrian came home that night smelling faintly of hotel soap and unfamiliar perfume, she greeted him with a practiced smile and a kiss on the cheek. You were right, she said lightly. I've been stressed. Let's not fight anymore. Relief flashed across his face, quickly masked by wary suspicion. You sure? He asked. I am, she said, turning back to stir the pot on the stove so he wouldn't see the hard new clarity in her eyes. It's not worth it. She felt his gaze on her back, weighing, calculating. He thought she'd back down. He thought the storm had passed. That was the night Maya Cole stopped being just a hurt wife and started becoming something else entirely. A strategist. In courtroom 4B, the clerk finished calling the case. Appearances? Judge Reed repeated. Cassandra rose smoothly. Cassandra Blake for the petitioner, Maya Cole, Your Honor. One of Adrian's attorneys stood. Daniel Hurst for the respondent, Adrian Cole. Maya felt Adrian's gaze on her like a physical weight. She didn't look over. Instead, she focused on the judge, on the neat stack of folders before her, on the steady rhythm of her own breathing. She remembered the night she took the twins to the discreet clinic Cassandra had recommended, their tiny legs swinging off the edge of the exam table as the nurse swabbed their cheeks. She remembered the investigator's first email attachment, photo after photo of Adrian and Sienna entering hotels, boarding planes, standing too close in lobbies. She remembered the moment Cassandra had slid the printed DNA results across the table, the words 99.9% probability standing out like a verdict. All of it had led to this room. All right, Judge Reed said, adjusting his glasses. His fingers rested on the manila envelope in front of him. We're here today to address issues of custody, support, and division of assets in the matter of Cole versus Cole. I understand there are contested allegations regarding paternity and financial disclosures. Yes, Your Honor, Cassandra said calmly. And we're prepared to address each of them with evidence. Maya's pulse thudded in her ears. Across the aisle, Adrian shifted in his seat, still wearing that faint, incredulous smile. To him, this was just another negotiation. Another room to charm, another narrative to control. He had no idea that every secret he thought he'd buried was already labeled and tabbed in front of the judge. No idea that the quiet wife he'd tried to write out of his life had spent months building a case against him, one document at a time. Adrian had come to court to erase a wife and 2 children with a few signatures. Maya had come to court to erase the man he pretended to be. And the first move in that war, the peeling back of Adrian's double life, was about to begin. Judge Reed's voice rolled through the courtroom like distant thunder. We'll begin with opening statements, he said. Counsel, be prepared to address paternity and financial issues in particular. I have questions. Beside Maya, Cassandra's pen tapped once against her legal pad, sharp, deliberate. Their signal. He's looking at the same things we built this case around, Maya thought. Good. She kept her eyes on the judge, but her mind slid back over the months that had led to this moment, each step another brick in the trap Adrian still didn't know he'd walked into. The first report arrived on a Wednesday morning, tucked between grocery coupons and school announcements in her inbox. Subject line, surveillance summary, Cole/Hart. Maya opened it with hands that didn't feel like they belonged to her. The private investigator, an unremarkable man named Dennis who looked more like a bored accountant than someone who could unravel lives, had promised to be thorough and discreet. He'd been both. The first photo hit her like a punch. Adrian and Sienna, side by side in the lobby of a downtown hotel, laughing at something on his phone. His hand rested low on her back, fingers splayed in a way that had once been reserved for Maya alone. Sienna's head tilted toward him, hair falling forward like a curtain, their bodies pitched together in an intimacy that didn't belong to colleagues. Scroll. Another photo, them at the airport, not bothering with distance. One shot caught Sienna's head on his shoulder as they waited at the gate, her eyes closed, his hand idly stroking her knee. The date stamp matched one of the emergency board retreats he'd claimed had run late. Scroll. Dozens of images. Different cities, same story. Hotel entrances at midnight. Restaurant doors just before closing. A shot taken through a crack in a conference room door, showing Sienna perched on the edge of a table and Adrian standing between her knees, his tie loosened, his face inches from hers. At the bottom of the email, Dennis had attached a spreadsheet. Travel/suite pattern, Cole/Hart. City. Hotel name. Dates. Suite number. The same numbers repeated over and over. 1703, 2301. 1905, their usuals. Maya read until the words blurred, then forced herself to read again. Heartbreak came first, sharp and choking memories of their own early hotel weekends overlaying the images on her screen. Then something colder moved beneath it. Validation. She hadn't been crazy. She hadn't been insecure, hormonal, paranoid. She'd been right. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Flight delay. Might be late tonight. Kiss the monsters for me. She stared at the message, then back at the photos of him kissing Sienna instead. When she forwarded the report to Cassandra, the reply came fast. Cassandra, this is good. Painful, but good. It shows pattern and duration, not a one-off mistake. Keep everything. We're building a timeline. The financial forensics came next. The forensic accountant Cassandra recommended was a quiet woman named Priya who showed up to their first meeting in jeans and a blazer and spread a series of color-coded charts across Maya's dining table. Your husband is very clever, Priya said, tapping one of the graphs. Unfortunately for him, he's also predictable. Lines of numbers stretched across the page, account names Maya recognized, and others she didn't. What am I looking at? Maya asked. Movement, Priya said. About 3 years ago, these transfers start. At first it's small, 500,000 here, another there. Then the amounts grow. She slid a page across. Maya's eyes snagged on the figures. 10 million. 22 million. 31,500,000. Shell companies, Priya continued. Entities incorporated offshore with no real business purpose. From there, money moves into two categories: property holdings under other names and financial instruments designed to be opaque. By last quarter, the total shifted out of easily visible accounts is here. She circled a number. 75,400,000. Maya's mouth went dry. 75 million. And change, Priya said. If I had more time, I could probably find more. But this is enough. Enough for what? Maya whispered. Enough to show intent, Cassandra said from the head of the table. She'd been listening quietly, arms folded, eyes narrowed. Now she leaned forward. Judges don't like surprises, Maya. They don't like it when wealthy spouses show up claiming to be inexplicably broke while still living like kings. This isn't just evasive, it's deceptive. It's fraud, Priya added. He's rearranging his world to look cash poor on paper right before he sues for divorce. Classic starving the spouse strategy. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Maya thought of the arguments they'd had about money in the last year, Adrian insisting they needed to tighten belts while buying Sienna a car as a bonus, complaining about school tuition while dropping 5 figures on a watch. She chalked it up to stress, inconsistency. But there was a pattern, and it was sitting in front of her in ink. So this isn't just about him leaving, she said slowly. He's trying to make sure when he does, we have nothing. Cassandra's gaze was level. He plans to keep the company, the image, the lifestyle. You and the kids get what he can't hide or what he feels like giving you. Maya looked down at the neat columns of numbers, the tiny rivers of money leading away from her family's future. We're not negotiating a divorce, she said. We're documenting a crime scene. Exactly, Cassandra replied. And if we present this right, the court will see it that way too. They uncovered the paternity plan by accident. Dennis forwarded an email thread he'd pulled from screenshots of Sienna's laptop at a cafe. She had the annoying habit of leaving it open while she went to the counter, phone on the table, trusting the world not to look. The subject line was harmless enough, strategy. The body was not. Sienna, Adrian. You keep saying you're not even sure those kids are yours. If that's true, why are you letting your lawyer talk about standard support? Push for DNA. Make it a condition. If she fights you on it, you've got leverage. If she agrees and they're not yours, we walk away clean. If they are, there are ways to make it messy. Don't let guilt cost you millions. Below that, Adrian's reply. Adrian. I don't know, they're not mine. I just can't rule it out. That's all I have to say in court. First says judges don't like drama with kids, but he'll raise the testing angle reluctantly. If Maya looks defensive, it plays in our favor. Either way, I'm not paying for someone else's baggage. Maya read the words twice, the cursor blinking at the end of that last sentence like a heartbeat. Someone else's baggage. He was talking about the twins. They're twins. The same children he'd once rocked to sleep on his chest. The room around her fuzzed at the edges. She realized distantly that she was gripping the back of a chair so hard her knuckles had gone white. Cassandra's voice cut through the buzz in her ears. Maya. Look at me. She did. This is what I was worried about, Cassandra said quietly. This is the paternity angle. He's going to sit in front of a judge and say he has doubts, then let the insinuation do the rest. He knows they're his, Maya said. He has to know. There's no one else. I believe you, Cassandra said. But court isn't about what we believe. It's about what we can prove and how fast we can prove it. Maya swallowed. So we do the tests. We do them first, Cassandra confirmed. On your terms, in a clinic we choose. That way, when he coyly suggests DNA testing, we're not blindsided. We're handing over certified results he doesn't expect. Maya imagined swabbing the inside of her children's cheeks, reducing them to sample numbers and barcodes. Something inside her recoiled. They're going to be so confused, she whispered. Tell them it's a game, Cassandra said gently. Tell them it's about science. They don't need to know the reason. Not now. A week later, Maya sat in a small, sterile room at a discreet lab on the edge of the city. The twins swung their legs from the exam table, sneakers thumping softly against the metal. A cartoon played on a muted TV in the corner. Rain tapped at the window. What's this for? Her daughter asked as the nurse opened a swab kit. An experiment, Maya said, forcing her voice into something like cheerfulness. We're helping some scientists learn more about families. Are we going to be on TV? Her son wanted to know. Probably not, she said. But you'll get stickers. That helped. They opened their mouths obediently when the nurse asked, giggling at the tickle of the cotton against their cheeks. Maya watched, fingers twisted together in her lap, as the nurse labeled each sample with careful precision. Mother. Child A, Child B. On the form, under alleged father, the nurse printed Adrian Cole in neat block letters. Maya signed. The results came 3 days later. She opened the envelope at the kitchen table once the twins were asleep, heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her neck even though she knew what the paper would say. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Twice. Once for each child. Relief washed through her first, wild and dizzying, even though it shouldn't have had to. Then the rage hit, hotter and steadier. He had been willing to weaponize this. To stand in court and act wounded, pretend to doubt, let their children grow up with a question mark stamped over their heads because it might save him money. She thought of the way he'd kissed their foreheads when they were newborns, whispering about doing everything for them. How easily he'd replaced that promise with a legal tactic. She slid the lab results into a plastic sleeve and added them to the growing binder on the counter. This wasn't just defense anymore. The DNA wouldn't only prove he was their father. It would expose the lie he planned to tell the world. The deeper Dennis dug into Sienna's life, the less she looked like a mistake and the more she looked like a pattern. He brought the file to Cassandra's office one gray afternoon. The walls were lined with shelves of labeled binders. On the far side, a corkboard held a cluster of photos and documents connected by thin strands of red string. It looked like a crime show cliché, except it was very real. Dennis dropped a slim folder on the table. Our Miss Hart has a type, he said. Maya flipped it open. 2 headshots stared back at her. Both men were older, handsome in a polished way, mid-50s with perfect hair and perfect teeth. Under each photo, Dennis had printed. Elliot Grayson, CEO/Grayson Biotech, divorced 5 years ago. Michael Trent, CFO/Trent Holdings, divorced 2 years ago. Paper clipped to Elliot's photo was a candid shot, him and Sienna exiting a restaurant, his hand on her lower back, her face tilted up to his. Met Sienna when she joined as an operations specialist, Dennis said. Affair starts 6 months later. Wife files for divorce within the year. Nasty litigation, rumors about the wife's emotional instability. Settlement sealed, wife walks away with significantly less than expected given Elliot's net worth. Sienna resigns and shows up a month later with a condo and a new car. He tapped Michael's photo. Same movie, different cast. New job, new powerful married man. Almost identical timeline. I've got emails between Sienna and a so-called consultant who specializes in helping women navigate relationships with high-value partners. He slid over printed screenshots. The consultant's name was blurred in the email address, but the signature read L. Morrow, Strategic Relationship Advisory. Maya scanned the messages. L. Morrow. Don't let him drag his feet. Press on the idea that his wife is ungrateful, that he deserves to be happy. Encourage him to think long-term, what life looks like once he's free. Remind him how much he stands to lose if he doesn't structure things properly. Kids, they're leverage, not obstacles. Another. L. Morrow. With Adrian, same playbook. He responds to flattery and challenge. Make him feel like a coward for staying in a marriage that doesn't serve him. Push the narrative that Maya is passive, dependent, holding him back. The more he resents her, the easier it will be to secure a favorable settlement. Maya's stomach turned. Adrian thought he'd found his soulmate, the woman who just happened to understand him better than anyone, who told him he was special, misunderstood, destined for more. In reality, he was Sienna's third project. A case study in a private consulting practice built on detonating other people's lives. He didn't just trade his family for an affair, Maya said. He traded us for a con artist. Cassandra nodded slowly. Jurors would eat this up, she murmured. Unfortunately, family court doesn't use juries. But judges? Judges have seen this type before. Sienna's pattern goes directly to credibility. And this consultant, if we can get her under oath. Her eyes gleamed with something that looked an awful lot like professional satisfaction. We don't just show that Adrian cheated, she continued. We show that he partnered with a woman who makes a living wrecking marriages and maximizing payouts. That makes both of them look calculated, not emotional. What does that get us? Maya asked. Leverage, Cassandra said. And a moral frame. This judge is going to have to decide who to believe when stories conflict. You want him looking at Adrian and Sienna and seeing not passion but predation. Maya looked at the board on the wall, the photos, the strings connecting dates and names. For years, she'd thought of Sienna as a symptom of Adrian's midlife crisis, an ugly mistake grafted onto an otherwise real marriage. Now she saw the truth. Sienna was a strategist, just like Maya. The difference was what they were each willing to burn down to win. The idea for the monitoring software came from Priya, of all people. If he's planning his moves from the home office, she'd said, there's a chance he's using the desktop for calls or notes. It's marital property. In this state, you're on solid ground accessing what's on it. As long as you don't go past the bounds Cassandra signs off on. So one afternoon, while Adrian was in San Francisco meeting potential partners, Maya sat at his desk with a USB drive and Cassandra on speakerphone. The software installed not with a sinister flicker of the screen but with a simple progress bar and a final ding. No drama. Just a quiet new presence buried in the operating system. It'll capture keystrokes, file backups, and any VoIP calls routed through the machine, Priya had explained. You won't be listening live, that's too messy. It'll just save audio files. Check once a week. No more. You're not trying to surveil his life. You're documenting his misconduct. Maya had nodded, even though a part of her hated the whole thing. She'd never imagined she'd be the kind of person who installed spyware on her husband's computer. Then again, she'd never imagined he'd be the kind of man who used their children as bargaining chips. The call came 2 weeks later. The software flagged a file labeled only with a date and time. Maya opened the folder in her bedroom after the twins were asleep, laptop balanced on her knees, heartbeat stuttering. She clicked play. Static crackled, then resolved into Adrian's voice. Just saying, the longer we wait, the more complicated it gets, he was saying. If I pull the trigger now, we can have everything wrapped before the end of the year. Sienna's voice floated in, clear and bright. You keep saying that and then losing your nerve. What's changed? Blake, he said. She pushed Maya to get a lawyer. I can feel it. She's asking questions about accounts. It's annoying. So stay ahead of it, Sienna replied. We talked about this. File first. Control the story. You're the one who's unhappy. She's the one who couldn't handle your success. You're worried about the kids. You say you're not even sure they're yours. I didn't say that, Adrian cut in. You implied it, Sienna said lightly. And that's enough. Judges hate uncertainty. We make paternity messy, we buy room. Worst case, they're yours and you're stuck with support. But we still spin it like you tried to do the right thing. There was a pause. Maya could almost see him pacing the office, running a hand through his hair, the way he always did when he was thinking hard about a deal. They're not stuck with anything, he said finally. There, look, I'm not heartless. Of course you're not, Sienna soothed. You're just realistic. You have a company to protect. Investors. Employees. You can't let a bitter ex and 2 kids. Don't call them that, he snapped. They're not baggage. Silence stretched. Then he sighed. But they are complicated. You know what child support would look like if I play nice? 40, 50 grand a month? For how long? 18 years? That's tens of millions of dollars. I can't. His voice trailed off. Sienna stepped into the gap. So don't, she said softly. You built this. You deserve to enjoy it. Let your lawyers do their job. Question paternity. Question her spending. Question her mental health if you have to. You're just asking for clarity. No judge will punish you for wanting the truth. Mental health is a stretch, he said, but there was interest in his tone now. Is it? Sienna's voice was silky. She quit her career to cling to you. She snoops through your phone. She overreacts. You feel trapped. That's a narrative, Adrian. Use it. The recording continued, details piling up, timelines, phrases, rehearsed indignation about how Maya changed and stopped understanding the pressure. They talked about evidence like chess pieces, texts to hide, accounts to restructure, friends to coach on what to say if called. By the time the file ended, Maya's hands were trembling. She'd known, abstractly, that Adrian and Sienna were planning something. Seeing the money trails, reading the emails that had been bad. But hearing his voice, calm and calculating, treating their marriage like a PR problem and their children like financial liabilities? It was worse. She sat in the dark bedroom, laptop open, her own reflection faint in the black screen after the audio stopped. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe around the weight in her chest. Then anger cut through the numbness. He could call her controlling, emotional, unstable, all the words men used to dismiss women who wouldn't quietly accept being discarded. But this recording was objective. Cold. He couldn't spin his way out of his own voice. She sent the file to Cassandra with a short message. Maya, got this from the home office computer. You need to hear it. They listened together the next day in Cassandra's office. When it ended, Cassandra exhaled slowly, a rare smile curving her mouth. Congratulations, she said. You just got what every attorney dreams of and almost never gets. A smoking gun, Maya said dully. A high-definition, surround sound smoking gun, Cassandra corrected. Premeditation. Bad faith. A clear plan to defraud the court and weaponize the kids. Judges don't just dislike this, they hate it. It undermines everything he'll say on the stand. I don't know how I'm supposed to sit there and listen to that in public, Maya admitted. With him right there. You'll do it because you have to, Cassandra said gently. And because every word is another inch of ground he loses. We'll control when it's played, how it's framed. But I'm not going to lie to you, it's going to hurt. Maya nodded. It already does. Then let it, Cassandra said. Let it hurt now. By the time we get to court, it needs to be armor, not shrapnel. The week before the hearing, Cassandra gathered everyone in her conference room, Priya with her binders of spreadsheets, Dennis with his thick PI file, a junior associate manning a laptop projecting timelines onto the wall. The court board was fuller now. Photos of Adrian and Sienna in cities across the world. Copies of incorporation documents for shell companies. Excerpts from Sienna's email exchanges with Ellen Moreau. A printed still frame from the audio waveform of the recorded call, labeled Exhibit, Audio 14B. Cassandra stood at the front like a general. Here's how this plays, she said. We let Adrian go first. He'll present himself as the reasonable one, concerned father, sadly disappointed husband, financially transparent. He'll hint at paternity doubts, suggest you've been spending irresponsibly, maybe even imply you're emotionally volatile. Because nothing says stable like rewriting your kid's DNA, Maya muttered. A ripple of grim amusement went around the table. When he does that, Cassandra continued, he commits to a story on the record. Every lie becomes a thread we can pull. Then we take it apart point by point. She tapped the board. First, DNA. We introduce the lab results, show the court he is unquestionably the father. That kills the paternity narrative and makes his doubts look manipulative instead of sincere. Next, we walk through the affair not to shame him, but to establish Sienna's role and his willingness to lie to you and the court. Dennis nodded. I've got dates, photos, hotel receipts, airline records. He won't be able to shrug it off as a brief lapse in judgment. Then, Cassandra said, we drop the financials. Priya, you'll testify about the asset transfers. You'll explain, in very simple terms, how a man worth hundreds of millions tried to make himself look like a struggling executive on paper. Judges like numbers, Priya said. They don't like magic tricks. Finally, Cassandra said, we play the recording. That's the hammer. After hearing him calmly plotting to question paternity and smear you, it will be very hard for the judge to view anything he said that day as credible. Maya swallowed. And Sienna? Sienna is the ghost in the room, Cassandra said. We don't have to put her on the stand if we don't want to, Her pattern, her consultant, her role in encouraging his worst instincts, that will all come in through documents and Dennis's testimony. If she's foolish enough to testify, great. If she runs, that tells its own story. She turned to Maya. Your job is simpler, she said. You tell the truth. Calmly. Clearly. You talk about the kids, your choices, what you sacrificed for the family. You don't editorialize about his character, the evidence does that for you. And if I lose it? Maya asked. If I cry? Then you cry, Cassandra said. You're not a robot. But you won't crumble. Because you've already lived the worst parts. Court is just the replay. They spent hours going over possible questions, rehearsing answers until the words lost their sting. Cassandra role-played Adrian's attorney, pushing, needling, trying out every insinuation she could imagine. Maya parried each one, sometimes clumsily at first, then with growing steadiness. When they finally wrapped, the city outside was already dark, office windows glowing in the high-rises where men like Adrian once looked untouchable to her. At home, the twins were waiting with a stack of picture books and matching frowns. Why is Daddy mad at you? Her daughter asked as Maya tucked them into bed. Maya paused with the blanket in her hands. Who told you he's mad? He did, her son said. On the phone. He said you're making things difficult. What does that mean? It meant she was refusing to let their lives be collateral damage in his next act. It means grown-up stuff, Maya said gently. She sat on the edge of the bed and smoothed their hair. Sometimes adults disagree about how to solve problems. But that's between me and Daddy. It's not because of anything you did. Is he going to move out? Her daughter whispered. Maya's chest squeezed. He already has, remember? That's why you see him at the apartment now instead of here. But is everything going to change? Her son asked. Like, forever? Maya thought of the courthouse, the folders, the recording. Of the future that would follow whatever Judge Reed decided. Some things will change, she said honestly. But some things won't. You will always have a home. You will always have food and clothes and a bed that's yours. And you will always, always be loved. By me, no matter what. They were quiet for a moment. Can you read the dragon story? Her daughter asked finally. Maya smiled. Twice, she said. If you brush your teeth extra fast tomorrow. Later, after they drifted off clutching their stuffed animals, she stood at the living room window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Adrian was probably in a high-rise condo, staring at the same skyline from a different angle. For years, she'd watched him climb those towers, believing his success was their shared triumph. Now the skyscrapers looked like evidence. Each gleaming window a reminder of the choices he'd made, who he'd stepped over, what he'd been willing to risk. This isn't about punishing you, she murmured to the glass, to the ghost of the man she'd married. It's about protecting them. And me. She turned away and went to the hall closet. On the top shelf, behind a box of holiday decorations, sat the bag she'd bought 2 days ago, structured, dark leather, big enough for files. She laid it on the dining table and began to pack. The DNA report, in its plastic sleeve. Priya's summary charts. Dennis's timeline. A labeled flash drive with the audio file, backed up in 3 different secure locations. Her own notes, tabbed and color-coded. Last, she added the thin folder of photos of the twins, first day of school, birthday parties, sleepy smiles. Not for the judge. For her. A reminder of what this was really about when the courtroom started to feel like a game. She zipped the bag closed and set it beside the chair where her plum dress hung, pressed and ready. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, the house was finally quiet. Maya turned off the lights and headed upstairs. Dawn would come early. So would court. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse gleamed like it had been polished just for them. Maya sat at the front table in her plum dress and pearls, the same one she'd worn to Adrian's company gala years ago. Back then, she'd felt like an accessory to his rise. Today, the dress felt like armor, simple, solid, unremarkable in the way that made people underestimate it. The case caption Cole v. Cole glowed on the digital docket outside courtroom 4B. Reporters loitered in the hallway, pretending to scroll their phones while really watching every person who came and went. Cassandra arranged files in front of Maya with the efficiency of someone setting up surgical instruments. DNA report. Financial summaries. PI photographs. A small, labeled flash drive that might as well have been made of dynamite. "You good?" Cassandra murmured. Maya flexed her hand beneath the table, shaking out the tremor. "Define good." Cassandra's mouth quirked. "Capable of sitting still while the world catches up to the truth." "Then yes," Maya said. "I'm good." Behind them, the heavy doors swung open. Laughter spilled in first. Adrian walked down the aisle with Sienna on his arm like they were heading into a premiere instead of a hearing. His navy suit was flawless, hair perfectly in place, jaw shaved smooth. Sienna's red dress lit up the room, cameras at the back rising like flowers toward the sun. They paused just inside the doorway as if to let everyone get a good look. Maya kept her gaze on the judge's bench, where the American flag hung motionless in the still air. Adrian's legal team peeled off toward the defense table, 3 attorneys in coordinated shades of blue and gray, all polished watches and calm smiles. They moved with the easy assurance of people who were used to winning. One of them, Daniel Hurst, glanced over at Cassandra, his expression politely pitying, as if he already knew he'd be sending her a commiseration drink later. Judge Reed entered a moment later, black robe swirling, silver hair neat, expression unreadable. Everyone stood, the murmur in the gallery evaporated. "Be seated," he said. "We're here on Cole versus Cole. Counsel, I trust we're ready to proceed." Hurst rose. "Yes, Your Honor." Cassandra rose too. "Ready, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "We'll begin with opening statements. Mr. Hurst?" Hurst buttoned his jacket and stepped forward, oozing respectful concern. "May it please the court," he began, "this is, at its heart, a sad case about a marriage that could not be saved. My client, Adrian Cole, is a self-made man who has devoted himself to building a company that employs hundreds and benefits thousands. He has also tried desperately to maintain stability for his family under increasingly difficult circumstances." Maya felt Cassandra's hand tap once against her chair. "Listen," the tap said. "Let him talk." Hurst gestured toward Maya, his tone dipping into careful sympathy. "Unfortunately, Mrs. Cole has struggled over the years," he continued. "She left her legal career to become a full-time caregiver, a difficult role for anyone, and one that can lead to feelings of isolation and resentment. Those feelings manifested, at times, in erratic behavior, snooping through Mr. Cole's devices, making unfounded accusations, becoming, frankly, controlling." He let the word hang. "Mr. Cole attempted counseling," Hurst said smoothly. "He offered financial support and housing well beyond what the law requires. But Mrs. Cole responded not with cooperation, but with demands that far exceed any reasonable assessment of need. He paced a step. And then, he added, lowering his voice, there is the issue of paternity. Maya's spine went ice-cold, though she knew what was coming. Mr. Cole loves the twins, Hearst said. That is not in dispute. But he has, for some time, harbored concerns, based on certain timelines and behavior, about whether he is, in fact, their biological father. He has not wanted to make a spectacle of this. He has not wanted to traumatize the children. But given the magnitude of support Mrs. Cole is requesting, and the questions that have arisen, we will be asking this court to order DNA testing so that these issues can be resolved once and for all. He looked solemnly at the judge. Today, we will show that Adrian Cole is a responsible father and transparent businessman who is being unfairly vilified by a spouse unwilling to accept the end of a marriage. We ask that the court see through the drama, address the paternity question, and issue a fair, sustainable order. He nodded and sat. Cassandra stood without fanfare. May it please the court, she said, voice steady. Mr. Hearst is right about one thing. This is, at heart, a sad case. But not for the reasons he suggests. She stepped forward, hands loosely clasped. This is the story of a woman who stepped away from her own promising career so that her husband could build his, and of a man who then tried to rewrite their shared history when it no longer suited him. We will present evidence, documents, not speculation, showing that Adrian Cole engaged in a years-long extramarital affair, secretly transferred over $75 million into hidden accounts, and calmly discussed questioning paternity to reduce his financial obligations. A murmur rippled through the gallery. We will also present certified DNA test results already obtained, at my client's initiative, confirming with 99.9% certainty that Mr. Cole is, in fact, the biological father of both children. Hearst's head snapped up. Cassandra didn't look at him. Far from being erratic or vindictive, she continued, Maya Cole has been methodical, careful, and, frankly, restrained in responding to conduct that would break most people. She has not hidden assets. She has not abandoned her children. She has not used her power to corrupt this process. We will ask this court to hold Mr. Cole to the same standard. She inclined her head to Judge Reed. At the end of this hearing, we are confident the evidence will support an order granting Maya primary custody, a fair share of the marital estate, including the assets Mr. Cole attempted to conceal, and support commensurate with his true financial reality. She returned to her seat, expression composed. Under the table, Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Judge Reed looked between the two tables, eyes sharp. Very well, he said. Let's hear from Mr. Cole. Adrian took the stand like he took stages, confident, slightly self-deprecating, every inch the visionary founder. Hearst guided him through his resume first, painting a picture of humble beginnings and meteoric success. The juryless room didn't require theatrics, but they got them anyway, the garage startup, the nights coding until dawn, the company built from nothing. And your marriage to Maya? Hearst asked gently. How would you describe it in the early years? Good, Adrian said, eyes flicking briefly toward Maya. Great, even. We were partners. She believed in me before anyone else did. We wanted the same things. What changed? Adrian's sigh was soft, perfectly timed. I did everything I could to keep up with the demands of the company and still be present at home, he said. But as the business grew, the stress got worse. Maya struggled with that. She became more anxious, more controlling. She didn't trust me. Every trip was an accusation. Every late night was a fight. And how did that make you feel? Hearst asked. Like I was being punished for trying to provide, Adrian said. I offered to get her help, to go to counseling. I suggested she go back to work if staying home was making her unhappy. She refused. Everything became my fault. Hearst nodded, face solemn. I have to ask, he said. Did you ever suspect that Maya was unfaithful to you? Maya felt the air thicken. Adrian hesitated just long enough to suggest reluctance. I didn't want to, he said. But there were times, odd phone calls, texts she wouldn't explain, nights she said she was out with friends but wouldn't tell me who. I can't say for sure she cheated. I just couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. And in terms of the children, Hearst pressed. Did those concerns extend to paternity? I love those kids, Adrian said quickly. I want that on the record. But yes. When you already have doubts, and your spouse is shutting you out, and timelines don't quite add up, you start to wonder. I didn't want to. But I'm human. Maya's nails bit into her palm. The twins had been conceived during a rare stretch of time when Adrian was actually home. The timelines he was vaguely alluding to existed only in the fever dream Sienna and El Moro had fed him. And your finances, Hearst said. Have you been honest in your disclosures to this court? Absolutely, Adrian said. I make a lot on paper because of the company's valuation, but that doesn't translate to cash in the bank. I've paid every bill, every tuition payment. I offered Maya a very generous settlement. I have nothing to hide. Across the room, Cassandra's pen tapped twice. There it is, the tap said. Perjury, gift wrapped. Maya forced her expression to stay neutral. Inside, fury burned so bright it felt almost clean. It wasn't just the lies. It was the casual way he draped them over their shared history, expecting them to fit. Hearst wrapped up with a flourish. What do you want from this court today, Mr. Cole? I want fairness, Adrian said, gazing at Judge Reed. I want a chance to move on with my life and still be a father to my kids. I don't want to be bankrupted by demands that have nothing to do with their needs. And I would like clarity, once and for all, about whether they are biologically mine. That's all. He stepped down from the pedestal of his own self-mythologizing and sat back, shoulders relaxed, as if he'd just executed yet another flawless pitch. Cassandra stood. Cross-examination, Your Honor. She approached the witness stand with a thin folder in her hand and a look that was almost bored. Mr. Cole, she began, you testified that you have nothing to hide regarding your finances. Correct? Yes, Adrian said. That's right. And that your concerns about paternity are based on vague suspicions and timelines that don't quite add up. He shifted. Yes. Great, Cassandra said. Let's talk about both. She lifted the folder. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to mark this as Petitioner's Exhibit 3. She approached the bench, handing Judge Reed the document. Exhibit 3 is a certified report from a licensed DNA laboratory, she said. It documents testing performed on Maya Cole and the two minor children, with Adrian Cole listed as the alleged father. Hearst was already on his feet. Objection, Your Honor, surprise evidence. It was discovered 2 weeks ago, Cassandra replied calmly. Counsel has had it. He simply assumed we wouldn't use it. Judge Reed flipped through the first page, eyes scanning the bolded probabilities. Overruled, he said. Exhibit 3 is admitted. Cassandra turned back to Adrian. "Mr. Cole," she said, "would you please read the highlighted line at the bottom of page 2? Adrian took the document from the bailiff, jaw tightening. He cleared his throat. "Probability of paternity is 99.9%, he read. "For which child?" Cassandra asked. "Both," he said, voice flat. "So when you told this court you wanted DNA testing to clarify whether these children are biologically yours," Cassandra said, "you already knew the answer. Didn't you?" Adrian's gaze flicked to Hearst. "I hadn't seen the report yet." "Interesting," Cassandra said mildly. "Because your counsel acknowledged receipt of it in an email that includes you on copy. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?" At the judge's nod, she handed Adrian another sheet. "Is that your email address, Mr. Cole?" He stared at the page. "Yes." "And did you receive this message from Mr. Hearst 6 days ago stating, quote, 'We've reviewed the DNA report, kids are yours, we'll need to adjust strategy accordingly'?" His jaw clenched hard enough that a muscle jumped. "Yes." "Thank you," Cassandra said. "So your statement a few minutes ago that you're not sure the twins are yours was not a heartfelt fear." She let the silence draw out. It was a performance. A murmur rose from the gallery. Judge Reed's expression cooled. Cassandra barely spared Adrian time to stew. "Let's move on to your relationship with Ms. Hart," she said. "You've described her publicly as a valued employee. Is she more than that to you?" Adrian straightened. "She's my partner now, yes. We fell in love after my marriage had already broken down." Cassandra clicked a remote. The screen on the wall lit up with a photo, Adrian and Sienna entering a hotel, his hand on her waist. Timestamp, 2 years earlier. "Is that you?" Cassandra asked. "Yes," he said tightly. "And Ms. Hart?" "Yes." She clicked again. Another hotel, another city, another date. Then an airport. Then a conference room. "Would you agree this looks like a relationship that began some time before your marriage broke down?" she asked. He shifted. "Photos can be misleading." "These are accompanied by receipts," she said, lifting another document. "Reservations for Cole/Hart in suites booked under your assistant's name but paid for with your corporate card." Would the word affair be more accurate? He glared. "Fine. Call it what you want. My marriage was dying. Sienna made me feel alive." "Thank you," Cassandra said. "That clarity helps." She flipped to a new tab in her binder. "Now, finances," she said. "You testified that you've been transparent. Let's talk about these entities." She handed him a list, company names that sounded like they'd been generated by a board algorithm. "Do you recognize these?" He glanced at it, jaw tightening again. "They're holding companies." "Your holding companies," Cassandra said. "Each incorporated within the last 3 years. Each receiving multi-million-dollar transfers from accounts in your name. They're part of legitimate business structures," he said. "My accountants." "Your accountants," she cut in gently, "do not move $75 million without your authorization." "Isn't it true that these transfers reduced the assets visible in your primary accounts right before you initiated divorce proceedings?" "I optimized my portfolio," he said. "Optimized," she repeated. "Is that what you call transferring funds into shell corporations and offshore accounts while telling your wife you needed to tighten belts?" Hearst objected half-heartedly. Judge Reed overruled again, eyes intent on Adrian. For the court's benefit, Cassandra said, turning slightly toward the bench, our forensic accountant will testify that these transfers significantly reduced the apparent marital estate on paper while leaving Mr. Cole's lifestyle unaffected. She faced Adrian once more. Last topic, she said. Intent. She picked up the slim flash drive from the table, holding it between thumb and forefinger. Mr. Cole, do you recognize the office computer in your former marital home as jointly owned property? I guess, he said warily. From that computer, Cassandra said, we retrieved a recording of a call between you and Ms. Hart discussing this case. With the court's permission, I'd like to play a relevant portion. Hearst jumped to his feet. Your Honor, we object to the... On what basis? Judge Reed asked, patience thinning. Privacy concerns. The device is marital property, Cassandra said. Accessed by my client, who is a co-owner. This goes directly to Mr. Cole's credibility and intentions regarding paternity and finances. Judge Reed looked at Adrian. Mr. Cole? Adrian's throat bobbed. I don't recall any such recording. That's the beauty of recordings, Cassandra said quietly. They remember for you. Judge Reed sighed. Objection overruled. You may proceed, Ms. Blake. Cassandra plugged the drive into the court system. The speakers crackled, then settled. Adrian's voice filled the room. If I pull the trigger now, we can have everything wrapped before the end of the year. Sienna, you keep saying that and then losing your nerve. What's changed? Heard in real time, in a room full of people, the conversation sounded even colder. They listened to Sienna urging him to file first, to control the story, to paint Maya as unstable. They heard Adrian calculate child support like a bad investment, Sienna calling the twins baggage, and Adrian not protesting enough to matter. Maya watched the back of his head as his own words echoed around him. He kept his shoulders rigid, but she saw his fingers curl against his knee. In the gallery, someone gasped. A reporter's pen scratched furiously. At the counsel table, Sienna went a shade paler than Maya had ever seen her. Her crimson dress suddenly looked like a costume under stadium lighting. When Cassandra introduced the part where they discussed questioning paternity and positioning Maya as mentally fragile, Judge Reed's jaw tightened. We make paternity messy, we buy room, Adrian's recorded voice said. Kids are leverage, not obstacles, Sienna chimed in. The audio cut off. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Cassandra didn't rush to fill it. She let the weight of the last words sit. Mr. Cole, she said finally, do you still want this court to believe your doubts about paternity are sincere? Adrian opened his mouth. I closed it. I was venting, he said, voice hoarse. Saying things I didn't mean. Under whose coaching? Cassandra asked. Ms. Hart's? Or Ms. Moreau's? Sienna flinched at the name. So did Adrian. Cassandra lifted a printed email. We have correspondence between Ms. Hart and its strategic relationship advisor discussing how to push you toward harsher divorce tactics and reminding her that kids are leverage. We will introduce that as well. Judge Reed's gaze slid to Sienna. She shifted in her seat. For a moment, her polished composure wavered. Then she gathered her bag, stood, and slipped quietly out the side door, heels clicking fast. Adrian watched her go, stunned. No one followed. Let the record reflect, Judge Reed said coolly, that Ms. Hart has left the courtroom. He turned back to Adrian, eyes sharp. "Mr. Cole," he said, "I hope you are listening very carefully to how you sound when you think no one is." They broke for recess shortly after the recording. In the conference room down the hall, Adrian's lawyers looked like men trying to stop a dam breach with duct tape. "You're exposed," Hearst said bluntly, voice stripped of courtroom polish. "The judge heard you planning to lie. He heard you call your own kids complicated. He heard you discussing asset concealment. If we keep fighting, he will bury you." Adrian paced, color high in his cheeks. "So what, we just roll over? Give her everything?" "You're not hearing me," Hearst said. "This isn't just about divorce anymore. That recording screams fraud and perjury. The financials scream worse. If the judge refers this to prosecutors, and right now, I'd bet heavily that he will. Our best play is damage control. Cooperation. Contrition. You told me questioning paternity was smart," Adrian snapped. "I told you it was risky," Hearst shot back. "You took that to a whole different level. We're past strategy and into triage." Adrian stared at the wall, breathing hard. "What does she want?" he asked. "Exactly what we turned down 3 months ago," Hearst said. "Primary custody, full disclosure, half the marital estate including hidden assets, alimony based on your true income, fees. You agree now. It might convince the judge you're finally acting in good faith." "And if I don't?" Hearst didn't blink. "Then you will spend the next several years fighting an ex-wife with a law degree and a case file full of your worst decisions, under the shadow of potential criminal charges." "I'd advise against it." In their own room, Cassandra laid it out for Maya. "He's boxed in," she said. "They'll encourage him to settle on our terms. That doesn't mean he'll like it. But right now, liking it is not his priority." Maya nodded slowly. "Do we push for more?" Cassandra considered. "We push for what we asked for from the start," she decided. "You've been consistent. That matters. The judge has already seen enough games for one lifetime." When they returned to the courtroom, the air felt heavier, like a thunderstorm had rolled in while they were gone. Adrian's side conferred briefly, then Hearst stood. "Your Honor," he said, "my client is prepared to stipulate to paternity and to the inclusion of all previously undisclosed assets in the marital estate. We'd like to focus the remainder of this hearing on crafting a workable custodial and financial arrangement." Judge Reed looked mildly astonished. Then his expression hardened. "Mr. Cole," he said, "given what I've heard today, that is the first wise decision you've made in some time." He shuffled his notes, then set them aside. "I could take this under advisement and issue a written opinion," he said. "But I don't see a reason to delay." He addressed Adrian first. "You stand before this court not just as a husband seeking to end a marriage, but as a father who plotted to undermine his own children's sense of identity for financial gain," he said. "You attempted to hide assets, manipulate the narrative, and use your power to tilt this process in your favor. That is an abuse of both wealth and parental responsibility." Adrian sat very still. "As of today," Judge Reed continued, "this court finds that the 2 minor children are, without question, your biological children. Paternity is established and not subject to further challenge." He turned to Maya. "Mrs. Cole," he said, voice softening slightly, "you have demonstrated stability, preparation, and a willingness to put your children's needs first despite considerable provocation. Accordingly, the court awards you full physical custody. Mr. Cole will have supervised visitation for the next 12 months, contingent on his participation in counseling and demonstrated compliance with all orders. He looked back at Adrian. Regarding finances, he said, all assets, including those transferred into shell corporations and offshore accounts as identified by Ms. Patel's testimony, are hereby incorporated into the marital estate. The division will be roughly equal, with Mrs. Cole receiving 50% of the total, inclusive of the $75 million you attempted to conceal. Maya's breath caught. She hadn't allowed herself to imagine a number. Hearing it out loud made the whole thing real in a way spreadsheets hadn't. In addition, Judge Reed said, based on your true income and asset profile, the court orders ongoing spousal support at the amount proposed by petitioner's counsel, and child support consistent with statutory guidelines for your bracket. You will also pay Mrs. Cole's reasonable legal and investigative fees. He paused, letting each word land. Finally, he said, the record in this case, particularly the evidence of asset concealment and the recorded call, will be forwarded to the appropriate authorities for review of potential criminal charges, including but not limited to fraud and perjury. A hush fell over the room. Adrian's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him. For the first time since Maya had met him, he looked small. He turned his head slowly, eyes seeking hers. She met his gaze. There was no triumph in her, no gloating satisfaction. Just a deep, exhausted clarity. This was what happened when you built an empire on half-truths and assumed no one would ever be able or willing to drag the whole thing into the light. Judge Reed banged his gavel once. Orders will be drafted and circulated within 10 days, he said. Court is adjourned. Outside, the afternoon sun burned bright on the courthouse steps, bouncing off cameras and glasses and the marble columns that had watched decades of stories like theirs. Reporters clustered at the bottom like a flock of vultures. Mrs. Cole. Maya. How do you feel about the ruling? Did you know Mr. Cole was hiding that much money? Do you have anything to say to other spouses in your position? Cassandra stepped slightly in front of her. No comment at this time, she said firmly. Please respect my client's privacy and that of her children. They moved down the steps together, each flash a tiny explosion. At the bottom, Maya glanced across the plaza. On the far side, Adrian emerged from a side door, flanked by lawyers. No Sienna. No entourage. Just a knot of suits around a man who suddenly looked more like a case file than a headline. For a moment, his eyes found hers again. He opened his mouth like he might say something. Then one of his attorneys touched his arm, steering him toward a waiting car, and the moment snapped. Maya turned away. There was only one place she wanted to be. The house felt different that evening, lighter, somehow, as if someone had quietly opened a window and let out air that had been stale for years. The twins sprawled on the living room rug surrounded by toys, oblivious to the legal earthquake that had just reshaped their future. Maya sat cross-legged between them, holding a picture book, still in her plum dress with her heels kicked off. Did the judge pick a side? Her daughter asked suddenly, looking up with solemn eyes. Maya considered her answer. The judge picked your side, she said. He made sure that no matter what happens between me and Daddy, you'll be safe and taken care of. That's his job. Is Daddy going to jail? Her son asked, ever practical. Right now, Daddy has to follow some rules, Maya said carefully. Grown-up rules. And he has to be honest about money and spend time with you in a way the court thinks is best. But he's still your dad. That doesn't change. They absorbed that, little foreheads wrinkled. Are we still going to our school? Her daughter pressed. Yes, Maya said. Same school. Same house. Same bedtime. Different schedule with Daddy. We'll make a chart. Can the chart have dragons on it? Her son asked. Absolutely, she said. They seemed satisfied with that. Later, when they finally surrendered to sleep, Maya sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone lukewarm, staring at the neat stack of orders Cassandra had emailed over for your records. Half the fortune. Custody. Support. Fees. On paper, it was a victory. But the part that settled deepest in her bones wasn't the numbers. It was the simple fact that the truth had held. That a billionaire, a PR machine, a carefully curated image, all of it had cracked when faced with DNA, documents, and a judge who still cared about the word oath. If it could happen here, it could happen again. For someone else who needed it. The thought lodged in her chest and wouldn't leave. In the months that followed, the aftershocks rolled through like smaller quakes. Adrian's hidden accounts drew the attention of regulators. Under the weight of potential charges and Cassandra's polite but relentless follow-up, he accepted a plea deal, probation, community service, mandatory financial transparency, and a very public acknowledgement of wrongdoing that made business magazines run side-by-side spreads of his old visionary founder covers with the new, grimmer reality. Sienna didn't disappear as neatly as she'd hoped. Dennis's file, forwarded to the right investigators, sparked interest in her pattern. The consultant, Elle Moreau, found herself facing uncomfortable questions about relationship advising that looked a lot like conspiracy to commit fraud. Eventually, charges followed. The next time Maya saw Sienna's face, it was in a news segment, the caption beneath reading "Alleged marriage predator under investigation." Maya didn't watch the whole thing. She had clients to call back. It started small, a woman from her old law school network who'd heard whispers about what had happened in court and wanted advice about her own high-powered spouse. Then another, referred by Cassandra when her docket overflowed. Then another, who showed up with a folder of bank statements and eyes full of quiet terror. Maya reopened a bar number she'd never quite let lapse. She rented a modest office near the courthouse, painted the walls a calm, unthreatening color, and ordered exactly one sign for the door. Maya Cole, Family Law and Financial Abuse Cases. She thought about calling it something grander, something that hinted at phoenixes or second chances. In the end, she decided the name on the door was enough. Word spread. Women arrived with stories that felt eerily familiar, men who used money as a leash, who hid accounts, who called them unstable when they asked questions. Maya listened. She took notes. She built cases. She taught them the same thing Cassandra and Priya and Dennis had taught her, that fear shrank when exposed to information and a plan. Months later, she found herself climbing the courthouse steps again, a stack of files under her arm, the morning sun hitting the columns just as it had the day Adrian laughed his way inside. This time, the laughter belonged to a couple arguing good-naturedly about parking behind her. She smiled faintly and walked through the glass doors. The security guards nodded, they recognized her now. Not as the billionaire's ex-wife, but as an attorney who came here often and knew the drill. Outside courtroom 4B, a woman in her 30s paced, twisting a tissue between her fingers. Her eyes darted to Maya as she approached, relief flooding her face like someone had finally arrived with oxygen. "Is it normal to feel like I'm going to throw up?" the woman asked. "Completely," Maya said. "But you're not going to. You're going to walk in there, tell the truth, and let the evidence do the heavy lifting." The woman nodded, inhaled, exhaled. "Okay." Maya laid a hand on the door handle. For a split second, memory overlays reality, the echo of Adrian's laugh,
the flash of Sienna's red dress, the weight of not knowing if the system would actually see what she'd brought it. That uncertainty is gone now.
She pushed the door open and stepped inside, feeling none of the old fear. Only purpose. Adrian Cole had once laughed into this very courthouse with his mistress on his arm, convinced he had already won. The DNA, the evidence, and Maya's preparation had ensured he left in shock. And ensured that the woman he tried to erase walked out not as his victim, but as the one who rewrote how the story ends. Before you go, subscribe, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and share the lesson you're taking away.